one, and we are live. Welcome to today's Ask Me Anything. Whenever you are, wherever you are, thank you for joining the Design of Everyday People, the event series where I talk to senior designers from all over the world, and you get to literally ask them anything. So stick around to the end when we get your questions answered, and let's make this session as interactive as possible by first dropping an emoji in the chat or wherever you're watching this of where you're tuning in from. Let's see where people are tuning in from. Let's have a look. Check that we're live. Okay, it's a little bit of a lag, so I'm sure the messages will come in soon. So welcome to this this event today. It's called How to Be an Introverted Designer. And before getting into the event, let's just start with some quick introductions. I'll go first. I'm Chris, the founder of UX Playbook, where I help designers navigate a fuzzy UX career with playbooks, courses, and coaching. From building your first portfolio to leading your first design team, resources to help you get clarity. But that's enough about me. Today, we are joined by Tim Yeo, or Yao. I need to get that correct. But Tim is a design leader and author and the chief introvert of his own life. Let's get him out here and find out more about Tim. And here we go. Tim, how are you doing? Tell the audience about yourself for those who don't know you.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for the opportunity. It is nice, warm, and sunny here in Adelaide, Australia, which is where I'm based. It is 12 p.m. lunchtime. Weather's good. Yeah. Maybe I'll start off with a bit of introduction to myself. Thank you so much for this opportunity for speaking with you and your audience. My name is Tim Yeo. It's pronounced like Yo, what's up? It's Y-E-O. But I've been a designer for the last 18, 19 years. I started my career in Singapore and then moved to Australia about 13 years ago. During that time, I also started the Quiet Achiever, where I call myself the chief introvert. Our goal is to try and help quiet people like myself have impact and influence without pretending to be extroverted. I've been doing the Quiet Achiever for the last 4 to 5 years. And earlier in August 2024, I had just written and launched my book called The Quiet Achiever. And you can see a copy of the book in the corner. And I think that's the main thing that we want to talk about today. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, I have no idea it's pronounced Yo, so that's pretty cool. Yo, Tim Yo. So that's cool. Really like that. And I do want to remind the audience, like as we go through this conversation, go ahead and drop your questions below because we'll answer your questions at the back half of this conversation, right? And you mentioned your book, Tim, and I really want to start kind of frame our conversation there, right? You've recently launched this new book, and as you know, I've told you a million times, I love the cover, The Quiet Achiever. Can you give us a quick sort of synopsis to sort of frame our question, and then we can kind of dive in?
Yeah, of course. I think the journey really started back in 2018. At that stage in my career, I probably worked in design for about 12 years. And I worked in different kind of organizations, whether they were large enterprises or they were small businesses or small startups. The common thing that I saw as I was working through is as you start ascending that career, that ladder, at the time in my career, the only way up was really management. I think when you look at how mature our design industry is these days, the maturer organizations have different career paths where you don't have to manage, where you can actually become a super senior IC and you get a lot of the recognition and the compensation that would come with a senior role. That wasn't the case in during my time, and I wanted to find a way to be able to give back to the community that's already given me so much. At the time, the best way to do that was to actually give talks at conferences to try and share a lot of these learnings. It wasn't it wasn't as if Tim Yeo started submitting applications to conferences and immediately got accepted. It was probably maybe a 2-year process of just submitting to different conferences before I got accepted. And the one talk that got accepted was a talk called Design Leadership for Introverts. Now, being a quiet person myself, as you can imagine, doing public speaking, whether it's something like this that's remote or whether it's in person in front of a large audience, it's tiring. When I talk about introversion, it's really about how we respond to stimulation. And as you can imagine, these kinds of interactions require a lot of stimulation, and it actually gets me tired after this. But I kept doing that conference talk. Every single time I gave it, whether it was in Australia or whether it was internationally, people seem to get a lot out of it. Some of the things people tell me was, they feel as if as I was giving the talk and talking about, people suddenly in meetings asking them what they think, and then they freeze in the moment and they don't know what to say. Talking about how they get very nervous when they're doing public speaking, talking about how they say yes to requests in their office, even though in their heads they were thinking no. In the talk covered a lot of these points. And I think the reason why, even though it was tiring, the reason why I kept doing it was because every time I gave that talk, people took a lot away from that talk, and I felt like I was really giving back. So from those conferences and giving those talks, I then wondered, how else can I actually help more people like myself, quiet achievers? How can I help them in a more consistent way over time, rather than just giving that talk at conferences or maybe even online events like this? So that's really where the Quiet Achiever came about. It started back in 2021. I put everything that I learned into a number of online courses. I also do one-on-one coaching with Quiet Achievers. I also coach people who might be extroverted and they work with a team of Quiet Achievers and they want to figure out how to get the most out of their people. And that has been going on for the last 4 years or so, since 2020. Sorry, 3 years or so, since 2021. Earlier this year, I felt like it was the right time to actually write a book, because having done this for a period of time, I kind of knew what the book needed to be and who I was writing it for. And that's really how the book came about. And the book really covers a broad array of the topics that I've been talking about: how to speak up and perform in meetings, how to handle difficult conversations, how to introduce yourself, whether it's in an interview or whether it might be at a group meeting for the very first time, how to make small talk, which is, to me, is harder than a lot of people actually think. Maybe for some people in watching this, it might come very easily and naturally to you. But for me, in my culture where I came from back in Singapore, small talk was not really a thing. So when I moved to Australia, I had to learn how to actually make small talk, how to say no politely. Really, when you look at all of these things, all these tiny habits, they are really skills. And I wanted a way to be able to perform and have impact at in my role in the work that I do. Because as a designer, I really enjoy my work. I see the difference that my work does and the impact it has through my designs. But sometimes, depending on the organization or culture that you work in, it may not be so easy to be heard or to be seen. Because maybe in some cultures, in some companies that people work in, maybe the louder people tend to get the attention. Maybe the louder people tend to be more seen and end up getting the promotions. But just because we are quiet, it doesn't mean that we got nothing to say. It's just that we process information differently. And I took everything that I learned from my experience and from coaching people, and I put it into this book. My hope is that it can help other people like me who are quiet, and have them have impact at work without pretending to be extroverts. So I might hand over back to you, Chris.
Thanks. Amazing. So we have something to announce here because I think it would help a lot of the folks either watching live now or streaming it, or watching it later, right? Which is that, Tim, you said that you're going to give away 10 free copies of your book, which is amazing. So I just want to say thank you for doing that and helping the community. Why don't you tell the folks on how they are going to get these 10 copies? So if you're listening now, you have a chance to win. And if you're listening later, you also have a chance to win. So Tim, why don't you tell us how these folks are going to get it?
So it's pretty simple. This is streaming live on LinkedIn. If you're watching elsewhere, that's great too. If you want a chance to win a copy of the free book, follow me on LinkedIn, number one. Number two, connect with me on LinkedIn and add a note. The note that you add, you can simply use the code word for this event. Before we actually joined this call, I thought Chris was actually going to be in Japan. So the code word that I used was Japan. I think it's actually coming up in reverse. So let me share that and unmirror it. So now the code word is Japan. When you follow me on LinkedIn and you connect with me on LinkedIn, there's a feature that will actually allow you to add a note. Simply add in the code word Japan in that note. And by this time tomorrow, 24 hours from now, I will randomly select 5 copies of the book to give away to people who connect with me with this code word. If you're watching maybe asynchronously after and you're watching the replay, if you want a chance to win a book as well, you can. By this time next week, so 7 days from now, I will do the same thing. I will randomly pick 5 people who have followed me, connected with me, added the code word Japan because I thought Chris was going to be in Japan on holiday, but he's not in Japan. But if you add the code word Japan, I'll know that you were watching this, and then you stand a chance to win one of those copies of the book. Back to you, Chris.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if you also type that code word Japan, then it helps to remind me to go to Japan. So that's something that I need to do. So get Chris to Japan. Okay. But thank you. So again, I want to repeat that. Connect with Tim on LinkedIn and type that code word Japan. In the first 24 hours, he'll select 5 folks to give away his book to, The Quiet Achiever. And then in 7 days, another 5. So if you're watching, you should do this ASAP. And if you're watching later, then you still have a chance. Okay. So let's dive into our conversation. I think it's, on topic. You said a couple of things that I wanted to kind of pick out. You said that typically louder people get heard in some sort of organizations, right? So what ends up happening is introverts pretend to be extroverted to get heard, to get respect, to get whatever, right? To get their point across. So could we like start that conversation there where it's like, why do you think introverts even pretend to be extroverted? Like, what is it? And why does this why is this the default in your view, or if it is? Yeah.
So maybe where I'll start is to share a story that I actually learned when I read Susan Cain's book. Her book is called Quiet. I read that book in 2012. It was the first time I had encountered the term introversion. So the first thing I'll say is that it wasn't always this way. If you read her book, the book goes as far back as the Industrial Revolution, which was around the 1700s, the 1800s. Now, during that time, before the Industrial Revolution, most people were working and growing up in maybe smaller cities, smaller towns. The people that you end up working were probably the people that you went to school with. right? You grew up around the community, and that was the way life was. When you fast forward a few hundred years to the Industrial Revolution, people started moving to big cities, right? Before that, a lot of the self-help book, before the Industrial Revolution, a lot of the self-help books were on topics like integrity, character, how to be a good person. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, when people move into big cities, chances are, you have to actually work with people and interact with people who you've never met before. The chances of you meeting new people occurs all the time. Whereas in the past, that might have been the people that you interact with would have been people you've known your whole lives. So the amount of times that you actually have to introduce yourself to someone brand new before the Industrial Revolution was probably very small. And then when people started moving into big cities, that happened more and more. And then now that brings us to where we are today. The chances are when we change companies, when we join new companies, we're always working with new people all the time. And that sense that I think Susan Cain used in her book, that term, the extrovert ideal, the kinds of things that were desirable in this culture, in our society, this world that we live and work in right now, it tends to favor people who know how to people, know how to interact with people, know how to speak publicly, know how to think on the spot and give answers. And then all of these traits, they tend to be more favorable to people who were more extroverted in nature. A lot of times, people, one of the questions I ask, what is introversion, what is extroversion? For me, I like the definition that Susan Cain used, where introversion is not the same as being shy. It's really about how we respond to stimulation. So when it comes to extroverted people, they will probably they prefer, for example, working in an open plan office where they can bump and interact with people and have off the cuff conversations by the water cooler. Whereas a lot of those things may be overstimulation for people who are quieter in nature. So people who prefer, where all those kinds of work environments might tend to be a lot more overwhelming and too much, and they feel very overloaded. So it's got nothing to do really with whether or not how good somebody is at interacting with people skills, because at the essence of it, all those things about learning how to make small talk, how to speak up and perform in meetings, in my mind and in my practice, they are skills. And the key point I hope everyone takes away is that those skills can be practiced and learned. And if you can find a way to practice those skills and that will help you have impact and influence in a way that feels authentic and natural to you, then that's the real goal. That's the goal that I hope everyone can take away. If they read this book, if they're listening to this talk, that they can find a way to practice these skills on how they interact with people so that they can have the impact and influence that they want at work. Not just suiting people who might be predisposed or who have more practice if they tend to be extroverted and being able to do that a lot better. I'll pass it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, before we dive into like the skills, because we really want this session to be super actionable for folks to take home. Are there some broader sort of strategies, do you think, we can kind of help introverts thrive at work? So we can get into these skills and how to build them over time. But what are some of these strategies that you sort of highlight in the book that you think would really help, introverted folks out there that maybe is struggling to sort of see success in what they're doing?
So I'll give you a few. In the book itself, we have a chapter called Meetings. I felt it was more important to have a chapter called Meetings because everybody's in meetings all the time at work, right? So, and one of the challenges that I personally faced when I was at meetings was I might be deep in thought. Somebody has asked this question, it is super interesting, and I'm deep in thought. And then suddenly somebody says, Tim, what do you think? And then all of a sudden, I'm like a deer in headlights. I'm frozen. I have no idea what to say. I make some weird noises and then hope that somebody else will actually step in. Because all of a sudden, when everyone's eyes on me, I just simply freeze. Um, there are a couple of tactics I mentioned within the book that you can try. First of all, if somebody passes a mic from you, you don't have to assume that you have to speak there and then. You can actually defer. When I say defer, I mean you could say, I'm actually not quite ready yet. Do you mind maybe going to Jane first? And then once after that, you can come back to me. I should be ready by then. I'm almost there. Other times you might be deep in thought, right? You might be writing notes, you might be sketching, you might be drawing wireframes as you are thinking about the problem. And then the microphone again is passed to you. You feel like this is a good opportunity, you're not quite there. In this instance, another tactic you can try is to give yourself a permission or license to speak up. Now, what I mean is this. So you can say something like this, right? I'm not quite ready yet. It's not perfect, but this is what I have so far. You can also say, look, I'm sure this might sound really silly for now, but as I say it, you guys can help build on the idea. But let me share with you what I have thought about so far. Now, this precursor, this prefix, this thing that you say, this is what I refer to as a permission or a license for you to speak up. Sometimes I find people are not ready to speak up because whatever they are working on in their minds is not perfect yet. It's not fully formed. When you bring in a cultural aspect to this, why do people not want to say things before they're ready? The culture that I grew up and worked in Asia, people don't tend to speak up until they are sure about what they want to say is correct. Because if they were to say something silly publicly and it was wrong, they would actually lose face and they would actually feel embarrassed. Now, this was the culture that I grew up in. When I moved to Australia, when I started working with multinational companies, with people around the world, I found a different way that people operate. Sometimes people think on the spot. Sometimes they will very openly and quickly share what they think because in their culture, their way of working, participation is way more valued than being right. And by participating, you actually show that you are engaged, that you're driven, you want to actually move things forward. And I didn't always understand that. I thought, I want to make sure that what I have to say is correct, that what I think is true before I actually share it openly. So we must recognize that different groups of people from different cultures are definitely going to be working in different ways. So the last thing you want to do, the best thing for you to do really is to, if it's an opportunity for you to speak up, and if you genuinely were not ready, you can say and give yourself this license to speak up so that you don't hold yourself back because you've already told people, look, it's not perfect, it's not ready yet, but this is what I have so far. And that way you don't hold yourself back. You can actually participate, actually join the conversation. Those are probably two tactics that I think of. I might pause there and pass it back to you.
Yeah, I think you said a couple of things that were interesting. And moving to Asia, let's just say roughly 11 years ago, I've also noticed this as well in terms of people pausing to speak and really thinking about it and not willing to speak up straight away in a meeting because maybe it's this fact of losing face or not so confident that they have the right answer because maybe the problem is slightly difficult, maybe they're unsure, they need more inputs of data. So having time to process, and I really like that strategy and tactic of saying, okay, well, here's what I have now, but feel free to, it's not perfect, right? Feel free to add, remix and improve. I really like that because I think a lot of times, I think this is also useful for extroverts or people in general that always kind of like rush to answer without and also having that pressure of being right. So this could be also useful for managers, right? Where
Mm,
you kind of have that pressure like, oh, I'm the manager, therefore when I say something, but 9 times out of 10, a lot of managers are like, hey, this is just initial brainstorming with you guys. What do you guys think, right? You don't have to be that, hey, this is the answer. So I really like that tactic. I think it could be used in lots of different scenarios and a wide range of roles as well.
mm,
Hey, like,
mm.
yeah, that's great. Yep.
And as you were talking, I was raising my hand because there's another idea that came to mind, which I also spoke about in the book. Meetings are not always the best way to get things done. If you are working across time zones, think about a meeting. It's going to be too early or too late for somebody that's on the call. So why, if not meetings, then what do we do? Especially through COVID, working remotely, there are actually very smart ways of working asynchronously. Recording a short video of yourself and actually presenting, let's say you were a designer and you're presenting your design for feedback. Being able to record that short video of yourself and then sending it into, let's say, a chat group on Discord or whether it's on Slack, you actually let people digest your presentation in their own time where they can perform their best in their own time zones. They can actually give you a lot more considered feedback on your design if that's what you are asking for, because they can actually stop and think and then respond to you. So the feedback and the quality of the feedback you get might be a whole lot better because people actually take a lot more time to process before they respond, rather than dialing in to another Zoom call at 10 p.m. after you put the kids to bed. And then all of a sudden you have to give feedback on the design for 5 minutes that you just saw 2 minutes ago. So that was the idea that came to my mind.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that idea. I've been using a lot of Loom just to send videos, and also not only does it help the person digesting it, it actually helps the person recording it because it's way more thoughtful and you're also almost crafting it like a presentation. I mean, of course, some looms are like on the fly, but really, if you want to get your message across, you almost have to script it and then do it in one take, right? So then in the act of doing that, you're almost more thoughtful with what you want to say. You don't want this video to be 15 minutes, right? Like a 5 minute loom is definitely better. So I like both sides of doing that. And I think there's lots of pros for the
Mm.
person recording and the person receiving.
Here's the thing
I
about recording short videos of yourself, right? I say that, and a lot of times when I work with people through coaching sessions, they say, yeah, it's a good idea. After that, they go and write an email or they go and write a blog post. They write a long message because watching yourself back on video is awkward. It's scientifically proven that your voice sounds like 2 octaves higher than you really think. And then you're like, why do I sound so high pitched? Is that how I really sound? And then as they're recording, they might go, they might have all these little ticks that they don't enjoy. The key thing I want to say is this: you will get better. You will get easier. The amount of time and effort it takes to do a good take will get shorter and shorter. And the key thing why it is important, it's really one of those core skills I highly recommend, recording a short video of yourself. Is then when you can record that presentation once, you can send it to everyone in the company who needs to see it. And you actually increase your visibility through your whole organization, not just to the people who can be in that meeting that you have set up to talk about your design. And then one day you might be in an office or you might bump into one of your colleagues. You have no idea who they are, but they saw your video, they recognize you. You were a lot more visible. And they will then get to see and recognize the impact of your work and your contributions. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, I think the skill of that video, yeah, definitely is really important. I think with any sort of practice, you just need to get past the point of I suck at this and I'm actually getting better. And the better you get at it, the more of it you'll do because you're just getting better, right? We enjoy what we like and what we're good at. So, and for me, because I've been doing video for a while, like even like cutting videos and editing it. And at the beginning of working, just, making videos, like everybody else, like you said, you hate the sound of your own voice and you realize these tics that you don't like. But I found that when I edit videos now, I'm completely numb to what I look and sound like, really, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of just trying to get that message across, and
Mm,
also that it's a weird feeling. I don't know if anybody on the call is have edited videos before, especially a significant amount, that I actually almost see it like someone else. Like I don't recognize that's me. So it's a really like good feeling,
mm,
right? Like you're not really kind of in your own head. You're like, here's the task of like getting that message across, what I want to get. So I would definitely encourage folks to kind of, record themselves more because at the end of the day, you will become numb, and it's more important about what you want to get
mm,
across versus like being super self-conscious because it's you on video, like
mm,
and you'll get better at that over time. So I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Tim, is sure, we're talking about like introverts, how they thrive at work. Do you have any like ideas, or is it even mentioned in the book, like specifically for managers? Like if you were like an introverted manager and you have a bunch of like extroverted employees, are there thoughts around that?
mm. So I actually have the reverse in the book. So I left chapter 9 as a very special chapter for people who were not quiet, people who were maybe ambiverts or extroverts, or people who maybe not quite sure how they identify it, and that's totally okay. I had a special chapter there because my feeling is that it's not us versus them. It is not quiet people, you know, and the other people, everyone else is an enemy. That's absolutely not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is we just need to find a way to work better together. Because I think that, if you have homogeneous teams, you'll get homogeneous ideas. Same people create same ideas. And I truly think that we actually need different kinds of people working together to create the best ideas, the best designs, the best kind of things that we do. My best friend is an extrovert. Just because she's an extrovert doesn't mean that she is not like me and we can't be really good friends. So the goal is really to find ways that you can work better together. And that's what chapter 9 is about. So some of the things we mentioned there could be, if you have a good group of diverse individuals in your team, there are probably a bunch of things you can do that everyone can work better together. So here are some of the things I mentioned, right? Why is it in some meetings that we expect people to give you an answer on the spot? How many times have we worked in brainstorming sessions or with working on an idea and we expect people to, I ask a question, Chris, give me an answer now. Some people process information differently. Maybe quiet people prefer to take a little bit more time to develop the idea before they share it. So one of the tactics that I shared, if you want to get the most out of your team, is if you were in a meeting or in a workshop, have a mix of silent and interactive sessions. So it could be something like this, right? Okay, we're going to do a brainstorming. This is the problem statement. Now, for the next 3 minutes, we're going to start off with a short silent exercise. This is the prompt. This is the problem we're going to be working on. For the next 3 minutes, why don't everyone just write down some of the ideas that you're thinking of that could help solve this problem? Now, we're after quantity, we're not after quality. So write down as many ideas as you can think about. And then at the end of 3 minutes, we can then start discussing it. So that's what I mean by a mix of silent and group exercises. Because when you think about workshops like this, first of all, you need some time to actually write those ideas. and then you talk about them. The benefit of having these session and this time together is to actually discuss the idea and then build upon that with all the brains that are in the room. The problem when I see how some people run sessions like this is that the first person that speaks will come up with the idea, everyone will talk about that idea, and then they'll talk about the other person's idea that they spoke up and they were louder, and that gets heard. But everybody else that might be quiet might not actually have their ideas heard. And the reason why I think it's important to do this is research actually shows that a third to a half of us in the world population actually identify as quiet or introverted in nature. So if you are part of a diverse team, and in your diverse team, only the loud people are being heard, that means that there's probably a third to a half of ideas in that group that you are not hearing, that you're not getting a chance to see the light of day, simply because the way that you're working doesn't allow them to be heard. So if you just did this small thing where you gave people an opportunity to think silently before they contribute, that can see a shift in the quantity and maybe the quality of ideas that you might actually see. There's a bunch of other things that I can share, but I might pass it back to you to see where you want to take this.
Sure. I really like that. I think having the principle that is also in the design sprint, like together but alone, right? We get actually silent breaks. And I think you could also do this in design crits where you don't just, throw out critique. It's like, hey, here's a prompt, guys, think about this. This is specific sort of feedback I want on these designs. Can you guys then, write them down, post-it note, put it on the wall, whatever it is that gives people more kind of time and thoughtfulness to kind of explain as well. Because oftentimes we sort of speak quicker than we think. Like there's a lot of people that do that, right? So it's like, well, can you then slow down to make sure that feedback, if it's a crit, be more thoughtful, be more measured, think a bit deeper. So that's really good. Before we go to the questions, because I know we're kind of short on time and this conversation is fascinating. But before we do that, Tim, are there any other sort of tiny habits and practices you just want to share? And then we can dive straight into questions.
If there's nothing else that you take away from this session and you want to get better at public speaking, the one tiny habit that you can do is to simply speak slower, like I'm doing right now. Beforehand, when I was, as I was working in companies, I used to give away opportunities to present my work, to present work, to be on the stage, to actually present to other people, because it always made me very nervous. When I was doing it, I was not good at it. My voice would shake, my hands would tremble. I would get so nervous. But the important thing here about doing a lot more of this public speaking is that it is still the way that people get heard and seen in the way that in the cultures that we work. If we can accept that this is the way that things are, there are actually very small things that you can do to get better at public speaking. So one of those things, you can do it today, is to simply speak slower. And that works for many reasons. Now, when you speak slower, like Chris was just saying, your brain can actually catch up to the speed at which words are leaving your mouth. What tends to happen when you get nervous is you actually end up speaking faster, and then you speak at the speed that you actually start saying things you don't mean, because your brain doesn't even have time to actually process what you want to say. So today, if you want to get better, maybe this afternoon or this evening, you have a presentation. The best thing you can do, the number one thing you can do, is to simply speak slower. Speaking slower also builds, when you actually change that speed at which you speak, it also captivates people's attention. Because when you speak slower, when you want to emphasize certain points, it is in sharp contrast to all the things that you say in between, the filler words, before you then slow down and make your next strong point. So if you want to do nothing else, you want to have a tiny habit that can help you today, this afternoon, with your presentation, just simply speak slower. The book also goes through the other tactics, like how to prepare scripts. I think there are actually three kinds of scripts. Most people tend to go and write a full-blown script and write down every single word that they want to say for a meeting. I don't think that's the smartest thing to do. There are actually different ways that you can prepare scripting. We talk about how you can actually prepare and get ready for interactions with people in your presentation so they can help you think on the spot. All that is in the book.
Okay, great. I think that was a good one. And I think I'm going to practice that speaking slower tomorrow. I think me and you both have the ADP list conference, Be More. So if you guys want to hear our presentation and how we speak on that, then tune into that as well. But yeah, I think I speak with a lot of filler words. I just had one there. So I should probably do a better job at speaking slower so I don't and ah all the time. But let's go to audience questions because we have a bunch that I want to run by you, Tim. So let's put that on screen now and I'll read that. Amy, as an introvert, I tend to overthink how I talk to clients and or co-workers that make it hard for me to clearly articulate my thought. Do you have any tips on how I can stop yourself from doing that? Like overthink and clearly articulate. I think that potentially this slower could work, but Tim, any advice for Amy Fan?
A lot of times when you're not the first one to say this, Amy. A lot of times, people when they come in, we talk about how can they have impact at work. They say, how can I stop doing this? How can I stop overthinking? They are thinking like there's a cure that can say, if there's a pill that I could take, ingest, I will stop overthinking. They come here to look for a cure. I have no cure, but what I do have is, look, this is me. I recognize this is what I'm doing. I tend to think before I speak. If this is like other people, if this is something that happens to you too, that you overthink, I overthink all the time. And as I'm overthinking during a meeting and I'm live and I'm expected to speak, what I tend to do is to actually write down a lot of my detailed notes so that it's outside of my brain, so that it is there on a piece of paper or on my computer that I can actually do something with. I can actually think a lot more clearer and sharper. I don't lose the idea. And now that it's actually written, whether it's written down in my book or my computer, I can actually free myself up to actually participate in that meeting. I can actually join in the conversation. Because if people invited you to that meeting, it is to hear what you think. But if you don't actually speak up and participate, then it's almost as if you didn't come to that meeting in the first place. And then writing down those ideas will actually help you process so that it's not all on your brain. It will actually free up yourself to actually think about the question that people ask you, what's being discussed, and allow you to actually contribute. Because you're not losing those thoughts that you are overthinking in your head. You had already written them down. You can then actually free your mind up on how to actually participate and say the important things when you need to say them, when you're in that client meeting or in your meeting with coworkers. I think one of the things that also tends to happen is not so much that we don't know how to speak up. It is how do we get the attention of others? Because sometimes the opposite actually happens in meetings. Everyone's talking, everyone's saying these things, but you don't know how to interject. You don't know how to join the conversation. Sometimes you see people and the discussion is going one way, everyone has jumped onto the bandwagon, and you're sitting there, you're watching this bandwagon drive off, and you can see this is going to be a really bad idea if everybody else carries on going where this bandwagon is going, right? It happens all the time. It happens to me as well. I see it all the time as well. How do you then interject and then maybe bring everybody else onto a different path? One of those ways is to accept that text chat, like the ones that we have here, is a first class way of communicating. If we were all here on a Zoom meeting, why is it that, why is it that speaking up like that is the only way to be heard? If you can start practicing and actually allowing people to actually have their feedback on chat and then pointing out, I think Amy said something in chat that was really interesting. Do you want to share more, Amy? If you start doing these things, it then lets people communicate the way that they want to communicate, whether it's text chat or speaking up, and then you can get the most out of your people. So to take it back to your question, Amy, the way I see it is it's not so much to stop and change who you are, because before, I think I really tried to do that, and I was comparing myself and trying to be other people. For me, that comparing myself to others was my recipe for misery, because I'll never be like them. But I came to accept, look, it's my nature. This is who I am. What can I do about it? And for me, that's really about taking notes, detailed notes, and then participating when I need to in meetings.
Really like that, Tim. Really like that. I have another question for you, and I think this is potentially similar to your experience moving from Singapore to Australia. So in my country, I was an extrovert, but now I live in the US. I'm more of an introvert. How do I make this an advantage? Maybe, do you have any thoughts on this based on your personal experience of sort of moving countries?
So in my experience and also in coaching other people, when people move to a different context, I think like, is it Waldemar? Is it? I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah, you're in a different place. Maybe in the country that you're living in now, your first language, maybe it's English, maybe it's something else. Maybe the country you moved to, that is no longer your first language that you're comfortable in. So very naturally, you miss out. People might be, when I first came to Australia, people here talk about footy. They love footy so much. Footy is like rugby. They love it so much. They got two different kinds of rugby in Australia. They have cricket. I like none of the above. So when it came to things like connecting with people, making small talk, having those kind of basic interactions, it wasn't a topic for me. I had to learn how to actually make small talk with people so that the real me can then come out and then I can build a connection with people. I think if you're talking about how do I make this an advantage, I would say, it's accepted that you move to somewhere else. Just because you are different doesn't make you worse. If you can find a way, two of the tiny habits that I say in the book, that I share in the book, that have actually allowed me to have the biggest impact over time is, firstly, the ability to introduce myself well, whether it's at an interview or whether it's at social interactions. Be able to introduce myself, one. And then number two, learning how to actually make small talk. These two tiny habits, these two sets of skills, they seem so trivial. Everybody wants to focus on the hard stuff. How do I give difficult feedback? How do I say no politely? I'm here to tell you, in the long run, if you want to have impact and influence, you want to be able to learn how to do these two things: introduce yourself, make small talk. Because these two tiny skills over time will help you build the amount of connections that you can have, and it can expand your network. It will help you open up more doors for you to then do other greater things that you want to do. I've noticed, if you talk about advantages, I noticed that quiet people like myself, we tend to be very good observers. We tend to notice things that other people might not notice. And that can be a very good thing, because maybe somebody might have told you the other day that the baby had gotten sick and they didn't sleep through the night and they came to work looking very tired. The fact that you noticed that they were looking tired, it's an opportunity to build a connection. The fact that you actually remembered and bothered to actually ask, again, it's an opportunity for you to build a connection with that coworker. And having a better relationship with the people that you work with can only help you work better together in your day-to-day work itself. I hope that answered your question, Waldemar, but if you got anything else, feel free to follow up.
We have a question from Hey Andre. Maybe it's Andre or Hey, but I like the combination of Hey Andre. Tim, can you name one or two peers that have influenced your mindset or your work, and why?
When I was looking for a way forward that was a lot more natural, a lot of the self-help books I read tended to point to the extrovert ideal. I spent a long time reading very widely and trying to find advice or ways of working that were more like me. The pivotal moment was really in 2012. If you haven't read her book, you should definitely read Susan Cain's work in the book Quiet. She also has a TED Talk. She had done a ton of research into this field, way more than I have. I just benefited from reading her book. It's a very good place to start to understand and see yourself that there is a different way of being in this world. Everything else I've read, I can name you a few other books that I found really influential. Jennifer Kahnweiler wrote the book The Introverted Leader. She is self-identified as an extrovert, but she went on to actually author a number of books about introversion and how people can work better together. Jennifer Kahnweiler. Other books I really enjoyed were Scott Berkun's Confessions of a Public Speaker. He gave a lot of very practical tips that you can use to get better at public speaking. He himself in the book also self-identifies as an introvert. Another book that comes to mind is Improv Wisdom. I can't remember the author's name, but it comes up with a lot of tactics that you can try to think on the spot and actually perform. In this context, it was with improv, like in a comedy show, to think. But a lot of these skills, I think, are very transferable and relatable to day-to-day work. Off the top of my head, those were the first few references that really influenced my work.
Amazing. Thank you. Talking about introverted leader, Lisa says, hello from Brooklyn, New York. I would love to hear your tips on how to demonstrate leadership skills and gain visibility without forcing myself to be loud and highly socialite, especially in a Western country. Any tips here, Tim?
Some of the things we've already mentioned. Not everything has to be a meeting. You'll be so surprised how a small thing like recording a short video of yourself sharing your thoughts. One thing that I used to do was, because we were working in a global company at the time, in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and in Asia, one of the things we did was a 2-week retro and also a monthly design team update. I used to record this and then share it broadly across the company. Because people were in different time zones, they didn't always have the time to log in. You'll be surprised how many times people then came up later, hey, I saw that update, it was a good update. In a short amount of time, you're able to actually tell me everything I needed to know to be aware. And again, being visible that way, not writing well actually takes a lot of effort. And a lot of times people prefer, in this day and age, I feel, whether it's scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, if you can actually tell people using video or multiple senses, like in a recording a short video of yourself, you actually communicate your thoughts a lot clearer. So definitely it's one of the ways that you can use to actually increase your visibility. Other things, if you combine everything, Lisa, everything that is in the book, whether it's speaking at meetings, how to handle difficult conversations, how to give feedback, how to say no politely, how to do public speaking well. The main thing I want you to understand, I hope people will understand, is this: there's a different path to success. My path, this path that I write about in the book, is about tiny habits, practice well, accumulated over time. it is not a silver bullet, like one magic skill that is going to make you all of a sudden a hero design leader. It is really from doing all of these things, all these small little things, not just, I mean, ideally all of them, but then the more you do and the more consistent you are, all this impact or these tiny habits that you practice will help accumulate over time and give you the impact that you are seeking as a design leader. So it's a different path. It is not a silver bullet. I don't have any silver bullets. What I do have is doing these small things. I can show up authentically because all these tiny habits feel very natural to me.
And I guess the last question is from me. You mentioned one of the things that you talk about in the book, or have also learned to do, is to introduce yourself. So would love to hear like that sort of breakdown or structure. So focusing like also go home and be like, okay, I need to figure out how I introduce myself. And is this in a networking context, or is it to complete strangers, or is it something else?
So I have to flip the book because my memory is a sieve. And even though I wrote the book and I've edited this countless times, I still have to refer to it. The key
All good.
thing on page number 20 is there are actually three sizes of introductions, right? You need three because you use them in different kinds of contexts. To keep it simple, I call them small, medium, large. A small introduction is something that you can say in one breath. It's something that is in 20 words or less. It is worth time to actually invest in preparing. When I say prepare, I literally mean filling in and writing it down what your small intro is so that you can actually use it, for example, in a networking event. Or maybe you bump into someone at a new company and you got mere seconds to introduce yourself. You're not going to be in this situation saying, "Hi, my name is Tim Yeo, and I've been a design leader for 18 years. I worked in Singapore." You don't have time for that long, medium intro. You maybe have enough time to say it in one breath and to capture that person's interest. And the reason why you prepare is so that when you need to use this introduction, it's right there in your mind. And it's also very good if you have a few introductions. So maybe if I'm in the social context and I was walking my dog at the park and I bump into the person and they say, "What do you do?" I might say, "I work in IT," or "I'm a web designer." If I was at a product design conference, I might say, "I'm a product designer working at an early stage startup on their design system." What do you do? So you can have different kinds of introductions. What I go through in the book is a framework that you can use to actually build and structure your small introductions. I also have frameworks on how you can structure medium intros and when to use them. I also have a large intro, which might be something that you use in interviews or maybe the first day they join a team and you have a bit more time and space to actually tell the story of who you are. So don't assume that there's only one size fits all. There's only one introduction that you can use. In my mind, there are three types of introductions, and you can prepare a lot of these beforehand.
That's cool. I really like that kind of how you bucket it, small, medium, large, because then it could be applicable for a lot of different situations. And of course, you know, being designers, we want to cater our introduction also to our audience, right? Because not everybody cares that you're doing this thing. So you can kind of like leave out some of the stuff or, you know, customize as needed. Tim, I just want to thank you again for joining this. It's been really helpful, and I hope folks have taken away the nuggets that you've shared. But of course, before we let you go, what do you want to share with the audience in terms of plugging stuff? I know you have your book out, so maybe I'll give you some time to just talk about that a little bit more. And yeah, take it away.
If you're interested in the book, you can Google for The Quiet Achiever, Tim Yeo. I'm sure Chris and I can share the link on LinkedIn as well. If you want to stand a chance to win a copy of the book, follow me on LinkedIn, then connect with me. When you connect with me, add a note. There's a feature in LinkedIn says add a note. Put in the code word Japan so that I know it's coming from this event. I will choose 5 people tomorrow. I will choose 5 people in 7 days to give out 5 and 5 copies of the book. Maybe the last thing I'll say to the people who are quiet and who are watching this is that, who you are is okay. You are enough. Comparing myself and trying to be somebody that I was not was my recipe for misery. I think there is truly a different path to have success. Just because you are quiet doesn't mean that you have nothing to say. My hope is that with this book and with the work that we're doing, more people can see that being who they are is okay. Because it's going to take all of us, different people, to actually come together and work better together to get the big problem solved. But it really starts from a place where people can see that, who they are is okay and it's enough. So if there's nothing else, take away from the message. I hope the book will help people in their day-to-day. I hope the book will actually help more introverted leaders or people who are quiet in nature, who are in leadership roles. I'm hoping they will stand up and stand out and be role models so that the next generation of people that are coming through have a quiet leader or introverted leader that they can model themselves off. That's really my hope for the book. And Chris, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Tim. That's a amazing message and sentiment, and I hope the folks on this call also sort of takes that home and says to themselves that, hey, there is a different way, and I just need to work on building skills that fit me as a person. And I believe your book has some of those nuggets that people can take away from. So, Tim, I'm going to take you off stage now and just do a round of housekeeping. But thank you again. Don't leave. Let's have a chat after this. But thank you for your time and everything that you've shared.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely, Tim. Okay, so let's do the round of housekeeping. So I want to talk about the next event before we go. It's October the 16th. This is the next LinkedIn Live we have. We are speaking to Harrison, a YC founder and the founder of Numi, a design agency. So he has a lot of nuggets to share about how to work effectively as a designer, how to be a AAA designer or one of the best designers in the field. And he released a video recently about the 10 things that A+ designers do. So I really want to break that down and maybe share a bit more about those tips and really what's behind his thinking, because he trains and hires a lot of designers and they work with a lot of great sort of founders where they design for. So that will be on October the 16th. So I won't see you guys for nearly a month, but to get notified, please scan either this QR code so you get notified for the event so you don't miss out, or you can scan this one here. So I'm going to leave that up. And again, if you subscribe, you'll only get notifications for these events, and they happen twice every month where I speak to designers from all over the world about a career in design, and you can literally ask them anything. So thank you again for joining, everybody. And before we go, there's something that is silly. Tim, I want to bring you back on just 1 second and just say bye to the folks. Hey, Tim. Again, thank you so much for joining. Any last words, or should we just leave it and do the outro?
Do the outro.
Okay, so until next time, guys. Bye. Where's the
This
outro?
is the design of everyday people.
It sound right, boy.
This is the design of everyday people.